So there's three major names to polynomials. Okay. Polynomials are describing equations that use numbers and variables. Okay. These three major names deal with how many pieces to the equation are there. Pieces to the equations are separated by addition signs or subtraction signs. So I like to call those fences, and I like to call these houses. So how many houses on the block is the what kind of polynomial we're talking about. And this has one house. So we use the word monomial, or mono meaning one. Okay? This one has two houses separated with one fence. So two houses meaning by, two by, so binomial.
Is this still chapter 2?
This is chapter 4. Okay? I'm going to pass out stuff for chapter 4 in a minute. Alright, and then this one is three pieces, three houses, a three-house system. No matter how it looks, it could be 2x cubed, it could be 2x to the 5th. As long as there's only three pieces to it, then it's called a trinomial. Okay? This one's a special trinomial. We're going to be working with these next chapter. Okay, that's why we're kind of leading into this. This trinomial is called a quadratic. Okay? It's called a quadratic. Okay? And the reason is, this is funny, is because when we break it down, and we break it down meaning we factor it, we're going to factor it into 4 pieces. So it's going to be like 2x times x plus something plus something. Now obviously this one doesn't factor nicely. Because I just made it up really quick. So this one won't factor really nicely. I could change a couple things to it to make it factor. Like that. So now I have something that would factor into 1x times 1x gives me 1x squared. And then two things that are different, so I know these signs are different. And then something that multiplies to be 4 but adds to be 3. And that would be a -1 and a 4. And so now, and this is what you're going to do next chapter. You're going to factor it down. But what I'm showing you is the reason it's called a quadratic is because quad is what? 4, right? It's got 4 pieces in its factor. Okay? And that's why we call it a quadratic. Prior to that, for right now, all we want to worry about is that this is a trinomial, because there's 3 pieces to it. Okay? So for chapter 5, yeah, we're going to break it down into a quadratic. But into 2 binomials. Do you notice that? This is a binomial, and this is a binomial. So we're going to factor it into 2 binomials, which is very important.
Is that because the parentheses are on those?
That's right. Yeah. So these are 2 separate blocks. Remember, we got everybody on the block's got to get the paper, and what makes the block is the parentheses, right? So, yeah, it's very important that, yeah, this is called a binomial because it's separated from this one because of the parentheses. So there's 2 binomials here. Okay? Does anyone remember what this was called? Polynomial. Why we call it polynomial versus hexanomial? Because there's 6 pieces, right? So why do we call it polynomial? Who remembers that? It has more than 3 pieces. And what does poly mean? Many. Good. So it's just saying many numbers. Anything more than 3. We're not going to keep calling it special names. You know, we're going to just say anything more than 3 is poly. Okay? Is this a polynomial? Yes. That's a trick question. Yes, this is a polynomial. Remember? Like, and this comes back to that whole saying, is a diamond a square? Well, it depends, right? So how about this? Is this square a rectangle? So squares are rectangles, but rectangles aren't necessarily squares. The thing about rectangles is that they have to have four sides, right? And those four sides have to be perpendicular to each other. The thing about squares is that they have four sides, right? And the four sides have to be perpendicular, but all the same size. See, these only have two the same and two not two the same, but not all four are the same per se. If all four are the same, it's still a rectangle, right? Because it's got four sides and they're all perpendicular. But it's not necessary, the rectangle isn't necessarily a square. And this is the same thing with polynomials. This is a polynomial, right? But it's also a monomial. Okay? So all monomials are polynomials. But not all polynomials are monomials, right? Because this is a polynomial, but it's not a monomial, is it? It's a binomial. And this is a polynomial, but this is a trinomial. Three pieces. Okay? So, tri, bi, mono. And then when it has more than three pieces, poly. How are we doing? I take it a step more.